Hello, everyone. This is Mike Fratto, and on behalf of Phil Oultram, Silvia, Boiardi, Alkira, and S&P Global Marketplace, I would like to welcome you and say thank you for attending today's fireside webinar titled Simplifying B2B Connectivity. Just a few housekeeping items before we get started. To ask a question, simply type it into the question box on your screen. We will get to as many of the questions as we can during the Q&A session. The presentation slides are available for download in the resources section in the console. And finally, the on-demand version of the webinar will be available shortly after the live event concludes. So let's go ahead and let our speakers introduce themselves. Take it away, Phil.
Thanks, Michael. Hi, everyone. My name's Phil Oultram. I run the go-to-market for Alkira in our international region. So I cover both the EMEA and APAC geographies. So I'll start with a bit about me, why I work for Alkira, but importantly, sort of who Alkira are as well. So I joined Alkira in 2022. This followed sort of over 15 years working for a number of different networking and security providers. I actually approached Alkira in 2021 after watching an industry analyst presentation on the future of the networking landscape, specifically multi-cloud networking at that time. And I became fascinated by the fact that these new networking players were still emerging and disrupting the status quo in networking and also entering into what is an extremely competitive marketplace already. And that's exactly what Alkira are doing today. So we are a network infrastructure as a service provider. We're a company backed by VCs such as Sequoia and Kleiner Perkins, and we were founded by the former founders of Viptela, now Cisco SD-WAN, Amir and Atif Khan. So they effectively created the SD-WAN industry that we all know today. So Alkira's network infrastructure as a service platform is the industry's first true network as a service. So as a cloud-delivered network, we're enabling organizations to build a global network in minutes that interconnects sites, users, clouds, data centers, and third parties, all with centralized visibility and security services on top. So Alkira is not just an evolution in networking, it's truly revolutionary. Essentially, what we are doing to networking is what the cloud service providers have done to compute and storage. And that is to make networking an easy as a service solution to deploy wherever you need it, whenever you need it at scale. So traditionally, this would have been a massive undertaking for teams, especially when you consider the complexity that networking teams are faced with today. So we're helping our customers move away from the complex, fragmented, hardware-based, hop-by-hop configuration setups that we all know today into a fully virtualized as-a-service network that not only solves traditional networking challenges, such as a global layer 3 connectivity, MPLS replacement, WAN modernization, but also the modern networking challenges that organizations are faced with as well, such as hybrid and multi-cloud networking. And most importantly, and most relevant for today's discussion, we're also working with numerous organizations like SITA to help them simplify business-to-business connectivity. So yeah, really looking forward to speaking with everyone today. And Silvia, over to you.
Thank you, Phil. Hello, everyone. My name is Silvia Boiardi. I'm a product manager at SITA, based out of London, UK, and looking after a few different products in the networking space. But let me first briefly introduce SITA. So SITA is a global provider of IT and communication solutions for the air transport industry. SITA has been around for quite a while, I'd say. It was founded just over 75 years ago by a group of airlines, and it's still owned by members of the aviation industry. Our customers include airports, airlines, ground handlers, global distribution systems, governments, you name it. SITA's technology powers pretty much everything that you see happening in an airport, from passenger check-in, baggage tracking, aircraft connectivity, border management. One of SITA's key areas is communications and data exchange. This is where we design and deliver connectivity across the aviation sector with global network solutions, value-added services such as mobile private networks or managed LANs, reliable messaging systems, and data and API integration for improved customer experience. I joined the company now around 2 years ago in the CDE business, so communications and data exchange, to lead the development of SITA Connect Go, which is our SASE solution built for the aviation and encompassing software-defined wide area networks and cloud-based security, so SD-WAN and SSE. As a component of the SITA Connect Go product, I've been working very closely with Phil and with the Alkira team to deliver integrated multi-cloud connectivity as well, so helping our customers simplify and really scale their network infrastructure across both on-premise and cloud environments. So hand it over back to you, Michael.
Great, thank you, Silvia, and great introductions. It's going to sound like we're going to have a really good conversation today. So our topic again is simplifying B2B connectivity, and we know that enterprises face a lot of challenges in interconnecting their applications residing in hybrid cloud deployments as well as on premises and in multi-tenant data centers. The demand for wide area networks that are highly configurable and quickly deployed is increasing even as network supports more diverse and complex applications, such as IoT applications, applications relying on AI, and other distributed applications. So Silvia, I want to start with you, and can you just sort of talk about some of the challenges that SITA faces and that you see enterprise face, sort of overall in connecting to partners, and how can that experience be improved? So for example, we know that most enterprises are using more than one wide area network, and this is everything from a layer 3 network all the way up to a VPN and other technologies. And of course, the larger the company, the more global the company, the more the number of interconnections that are in use grows. So what are some of those challenges? What are some of the things that you see and that you hear from your peers?
Well, enterprises, especially in the aviation industry, where really collaboration is key, they often struggle with connectivity to partners for three main reasons, I think. These are not the only reasons, but probably is the ones we see the most. First, many still rely on, let's call them old school private networks, especially for critical traffic. This reliance is partly due to the fact that aviation industry is naturally risk averse, as you'd imagine, and to the misconception that these legacy systems offer great stability. And it's true, private networks are reliable, but they're really not very flexible, and setting up new partner connections can take weeks or months, which is not ideal when you're trying to move fast in today's environment. Another consideration to make is enterprises nowadays all have some sort of cloud strategy, but they are at different stages of this implementation. We see many players in the aviation industry, and usually larger, more established, more global ones, that prefer a hybrid private and public cloud approach. So they still keep key resources in private data centers. On the other hand, you still have smaller, more local players, or simply those that are more advanced in the execution of their cloud transformation, who tend to lean more heavily on internet-only connectivity and adopt a public cloud-first approach. And even when you are in the public cloud, partners often use different cloud providers. So you have AWS, the next person is, or the next enterprise is in Azure, or a mix of them, or Google Cloud, and so on and so forth. So you can see how getting all these systems to talk can really be a nightmare without the right architecture. And one last point that is worth mentioning is every enterprise, every partner has its own security rules, security certifications, security infrastructure, firewalls, and so on and so forth. So aligning on a common security standard can really delay onboarding. Phil, would you agree? And what do you see from the Alkira perspective?
Yeah, thanks, Silvia. So I think it's interesting you mentioned sort of the different journeys that airlines and things are on in terms of their cloud journey, because I guess what we've seen over the past decade across a number of different industries is that customers have been moving more and more workloads into the cloud, and certainly within different sectors, I would say this rate of transition just continues to accelerate. So this kind of proliferation of networks has created a real massive complexity within a lot of these enterprises, because they're now grappling with a growing number of VPN tunnels used to interconnect users, sites, clouds, data centers, third parties, and this is then kind of further amplified when they're trying to build secure and scalable business partner connectivity. So traditionally, as you said, we've seen organizations leveraging these more sort of legacy hardware-based constructs and building site-to-site VPNs or providing circuits to achieve that business connectivity. Yet, given the trends that we're seeing in the industry, such as the internet is the new transit and cloud is the new data center, then these connectivity types need to evolve in line with the trends that we're seeing. So from a business connectivity standpoint, this would include things like cloud peering, which is something we're starting to see more and more of. Again, Silvia, as you sort of mentioned, you've got those different organizations in different clouds. How do you bring that together? And this is why businesses are really sort of now struggling to maintain the same levels of visibility and security controls that they've been used to, because they're evolving to these new methods of connectivity, which is kind of a step away from that traditional approach and architecture. So as these new connectivity types are being established, we're seeing increases in the challenges that appear with centralized visibility and security. And currently, they're also not built to scale either. If you start adding these new types of connectivity in a fragmented way, then how are you going to scale that? So all of this is also causing other issues then, like firewall sprawl, where we're seeing multiple sets of firewalls deployed across multiple regions and locations, and ultimately that then works against some of the cost reduction initiatives that these organizations are trying to achieve. So yeah, a myriad of different challenges. I'd say on the theme of security as well, end-to-end segmentation, so the true separation of traffic at layer 3 on a global scale across hybrid and multi-cloud is a tall order for any business, especially given that most of the cloud service providers don't support that function natively. So yeah, a whole host of different challenges.
Yes.
So, I'm sorry, go ahead, Silvia.
No. I was just reiterating the point that Phil's just made, like two key things as segmentation and visibility to improve the partner connectivity experience. Those are, even from our perspective and dealing with our airline customers, these are the two main key factors that can really improve the experience. And at SITA, we are supporting several customers with their migrations from private networks to more modern software-defined networking, like SITA Connect Go. And with SD-WAN, what you see is that you can really centralize control, ensure traffic segmentation, and adapt quickly to each partner setup. And at the same time, by combining SD-WAN with cloud and multi-cloud networking solutions, customers really achieve the full end-to-end visibility while ensuring segmentation and security, zero trust security across both the environment, so on-premise and cloud.
So what are some of the benefits, briefly, that are derived from using software-defined networking and SD-WAN? It sounds like it's a lot of operational benefits.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Is operational because of the simplicity on how you can now manage your network. Using SD-WAN, having a centralized controller, you can design your traffic forwarding policies, your security policies, and push them literally with a click of a button to all your sites in your SD-WAN estate. So this gives you, first of all, control. It gives you the confidence that all your sites are aligned to your company policies, being then security policies, for example. And it also ensures that this level of visibility also is improving your monitoring capabilities, right?
And Phil, what are you seeing across Alkira's global estate? So how are you? What are your customers doing to address some of these operational or technical challenges?
Yeah, so I guess to kind of improve on the current scenario they're faced with and addressing those challenges, that the work we're doing in the field right now is to sit down with those organizations, and we sat with one this week where we sat down and said, right, let's look at the network holistically and where it needs to be 3 or even 5 years from now. And the industry is moving so quickly. That's a difficult thing to do, but often what we're doing is working with customers on this North Star architecture. And the common themes I'm seeing that arise in those conversations are simplicity, visibility, agility, and scale. So simplicity, because the networks they operate today are incredibly complex. Visibility, because they're fragmented and they're operating in different silos, whether that be different on-prem silos, different regions of the world, or different cloud service providers. And the agility, because the business is used to moving at the speed of cloud, but the network is not. It's still sort of lagging behind in that sense. So, and then finally, so from a scale perspective, that's when we're really looking at those future trends like AI to really start to understand how is my network going to scale to meet the demands of AI in the future. So when we have these kind of architectural discussions with them, many organizations in the current state have sort of built this north-south connectivity from cloud, to the cloud from on-prem. And from there, they're then deploying these sort of different siloed networks inside of each of the different cloud service providers where they're managing some of those east-west communications, yet they're also then tromboning some of that traffic between clouds from north-south to east-west. And it's very fragmented. There's a real sort of lack of visibility. And ultimately, it was the legacy network architecture that served them well to get to the cloud, but it's definitely not fit for purpose in order for them to sort of really benefit from the agility that the cloud would bring. And the network ultimately is then still seen as the bottleneck. So for me, if we're thinking about ways to improve, then taking this holistic view of your network, so almost this kind of hybrid mesh view to networking across all of your sites, users, clouds, data centers, third parties is the key to sort of driving those 4 points I mentioned earlier around simplicity, visibility, and maintaining high levels of security as well.
Yeah, organizations that I've talked to that have focused on in their planning stages have focused on operational agility, simplicity, the ability to be changeable, have been very prepared for whatever sort of comes down the pike. I mean, 5 years ago, who would have predicted the rise of AI and what it's doing to the network? But those organizations that had prepared for it, they were ready to sort of, pick up and kind of run with it, knowing that the connectivity was in place and that they could make it do what they needed to do, very quickly. So that agility is, very important for just sort of future-proofing. It's not buying the right technology necessarily. It's understanding what are the operational challenges and how do we get to them and how do we address them in the future. So that leads us off to our next question. You both mentioned security a number of times, and it's always top of mind when we talk about any kind of technology and certainly with networking. So, the next question is really around, how enterprises are securing the wide area traffic, both, within their own network, whether it's regional or global, but also to their partners. Silvia, you mentioned, partner security. Phil, you've mentioned it as well. And, the security challenges are compounded now, not just by the sort of the distributed nature of enterprises and the global nature of enterprises, but also the number of compute environments or application environments that partners need to connect to, whether it's a cloud service or it's a SaaS service or it's something that's on premises. So Silvia, what are some of those security challenges that SITA is seeing, and sort of how are you addressing? What are those sort of practices that seem to work out well?
Well, alongside reliability, I'd say security is one of the major concerns in aviation. So we have made it our focus at SITA as well when we developed our SITA Connect Go SD-WAN and SSE solution. So first of all, you have SD-WAN, software-defined wide area network. SD-WAN doesn't just route traffic intelligently, it also builds in security with end-to-end encryption, micro-segmentation to isolate traffic between applications, between regions and partners, identity-based access, and as I was just mentioning earlier, centralized policy control so that updates are instantly and consistently pushed across the network. Now, with the widespread use of cloud resources nowadays, alongside SD-WAN, enterprises are also adopting SSE, Security Service Edge, to make a unified SASE, so Secure Access Service Edge approach to both networking and security. SSE, Security Service Edge, adds a set of cloud-based security features to complement those that are already provided by SD-WAN. Few examples that are relevant to protecting an enterprise's own users of data, but as well as to partner integration, could be, for example, ZTNA, Zero Trust Network Access, where secure access is enabled for remote users based on context and with the least privilege best practice in mind. Or DLP, data loss prevention, to prevent data leakage and enforce governance. Or even Cloud Access Security Broker, CASB, to ensure access to cloud applications, ensure corporate compliance, while facilitating partner collaborations as well through the use of shared platforms that are hosted in the cloud, such as Office 365, for example. Phil, what's Alkira's take on security in and across clouds and between partner enterprises?
Yeah, thanks, Silvia. So I've already sort of touched on the end-to-end segmentation, and this is kind of the secure by design approach that you can take to B2B connectivity, especially within the cloud. Especially when you start to consider in your world, Silvia, that the different security postures that some of those businesses might have when they're connecting to each other. Airline A versus airline B might have differing security postures depending on the age of the organization, the global scale, or whatever it might be. And if you're wanting to sort of provide connectivity between them or from them to SITA or from them to other businesses or other application service providers, then that's a key consideration when it comes to that network level segmentation. And I know when we first started working with SITA, this was one of the kind of key design specifications that SITA approached Alkira with during that vendor selection process, because ultimately it's very important and critical to SITA to make sure that airlines, airports are all logically and securely separate. So think of those as each having their own sort of security zone or tenant space. But to your point there, SITA, extending that capability from on-prem into sort of hybrid and multi-cloud setups, it not only involves expertise within each of the different cloud service providers, so people who understand how to build that segmentation within multiple cloud service providers, if at all possible. A lot of those cloud service providers don't support it natively, so you're then possibly even using different third-party tools to do that. But also then leveraging a new set of expertise to build on-prem and do the hop-by-hop configuration of sort of routers and firewalls and stitching all of that together. So yeah, that ability to sort of build those segments aligned with what traffic's coming from on-prem and across multi-cloud is sort of key component really in terms of that secure networking. So Silvia, I don't know if you've got some examples of some of the types of customers that we've worked with.
Yes, thanks, Phil. So at SITA, we see and support quite interesting and specific examples of communication between enterprises in the aviation industry. Let me give you maybe one where we leverage the Alkira platform, as Phil was just introducing. So airlines, they need to connect to DCS. DCS are departure control systems. to manage critical airport operations like think of check-in, boarding, seat assignment, baggage handling, flight status update, you name it. These systems are often hosted externally by third parties or airport authorities. It is really key for airlines to establish a reliable, secure connectivity to DCS systems to ensure real-time flow of information and therefore a smooth passenger processing at every airport location that they serve. Now, just as other entities in the aviation industry, many DCS providers are also moving from private data centers to the public cloud. And as this evolution happens, airlines face the challenge of having to move to adapt their existing connectivity to follow their preferred DCS. Leveraging SITA Connect Go SD-WAN integrated with the Alkira platform, we can establish connectivity between airlines and applications, being DCS, as I was just mentioning, or other third-party application, really, no matter which cloud provider and where in the world they are sitting. This is achieved ensuring security via end-to-end encryption through SD-WAN and throughout the Alkira platform, segmentation and segregation of traffic, as well as implementing additional security control through the next-gen firewall capabilities that are available on demand on the Alkira platform, so that customers and third parties can operate with full confidence.
Yeah, thanks, Silvia. I know some of the examples of which we've been able to see across a number of different Alkira customers as it relates to sort of the amount of time saved when it comes to building that cross-cloud connectivity and not having to have that deep expertise in terms of each of the individual cloud service providers, networking topologies and tools that you need to build and connect to each other. The operational efficiencies that can be driven by that approach are pretty significant. I don't know, obviously, SITA have sort of benefited from that too. So that's been great.
So what kinds of, just sort of one last question, it seems like two of the primary benefits are one, sort of that the operation, operationalizing security controls and the ability to do that quickly and consistently across, the entire IT estate. And then the second sort of benefit is the speed with which these changes can take place, right? Rather than having to go and touch multiple systems or individual units and balance policies. I guess how would you assess the benefit of having a consistent, sort of global, control plane in order to make changes?
Yeah, so to answer it from an Alkira perspective, that ability to create a change in region A that impacts region B, C, and D immediately is a far kind of cry from the legacy networking that we would know, the hop by hop configuration that we would have perhaps deployed elsewhere with physical locations all around the world where you might have a myriad of different engineers doing different things and kind of stitching all of that together. And the same applies to the cloud as well. If you want to build a segment in cloud A and have that span the world globally, yeah, having that unified architecture, as you said, is exactly the kind of outcomes we can start to deliver. And that's a way away from kind of the traditional networking approaches that we've seen.
Okay.
Yeah, I would totally agree. It's definitely a matter of time saved, cost savings, much more security and confidence in the security policies, that the security policies are consistently applied across all your environments, and you're keeping a certain level of standardization. So definitely benefits all the way.
Okay, great. So let's shift topics just a little bit and let's talk about how enterprises can successfully sort of prepare for emerging technologies, right? And how they're going to impact the network. we know that there are a bunch of emerging technologies enterprises are wrestling with right now. There's artificial intelligence. We'll talk about that a little bit more in the next segment. But there's also a lot of things going on around supporting IoT, the distributed nature of applications sort of in and of themselves, more communications between different applications wherever they happen to reside in those components. There's supporting things like autonomous machinery and automating IT and just general automation overall. Quantum computing is on the horizon, and a lot of organizations are they're not thinking about it yet, but it's probably something that would be good to sort of consider for the future. So Silvia, let's start with you again. What kinds of challenges do these emerging technologies present, and how is SITA preparing for them, and how do you see your customers preparing for them?
Well, emerging technologies are definitely reshaping the enterprise IT, including the aviation industry. A few things I can think of is, for example, IoT solutions, which appear in the list. They are being used with sensor placed on aircraft engines to monitor equipment performance. Then the potential of AI and machine learning is being explored to analyze all the vast amount of data that is collected by the sensor for predictive maintenance, for example, allowing airlines to identify equipment failures before they even occur. So definitely an exciting, very exciting field and exciting advancements in how we are able to tackle and even prevent problems. But alongside all the excitement, there are new challenges that are brought along by these new technologies, emerging technologies. For example, AI workloads, real-time analytics, connected devices such as sensor on airplanes that I was just mentioning, or biometric scanners, smart baggage systems, they all generate a huge volume of data. And this data needs to move quickly and securely across the network, often across cloud, edge, on-prem environments. At the same time, with increasingly distributed architecture, it's really hard to maintain what we've mentioned before, visibility, and apply consistent policies and troubleshoot performance issues as well. And very much tied to this point, emerging tech also comes with new attack surfaces, as it often bypasses the traditional security model, if you'd like. Think of those IoT devices or machine-to-machine traffic that doesn't really flow through legacy perimeter control, or the threat brought along by quantum computing as well. Why not? So the threat landscape is really expanded and requires more stringent controls for data being in transit or at rest. What's your view, Phil, on this point?
Yeah, sure. So I think maybe from an IoT perspective, sort of number 4 on the list there, then kind of given the nature of IoT and how it's used or consumed, it often requires much more kind of distributed architectures. And this kind of creates challenges for a number of different reasons, especially when you're sort of leveraging those traditional network deployments. So all of the global scale and rapid availability of networking services, policies, security that I talked about earlier, it's kind of the perfect complement to help meet the challenge of IoT head on and really sort of meets that across the board. Looking at some of the others here, I think AI is obviously everyone's favorite topic. It presents numerous challenges. I mean, one such example is sort of shadow AI. So I keep hearing at the moment that shadow AI is the new shadow IT, but it's faster and smarter and harder to see. So that obviously is creating a significant security and visibility challenge. But I'd say if we consider the foundational layer, so the network as the foundational layer, if we consider that has the scale and the agility to sort of support these fast changing requirements, then things like deep visibility into cloud and internet-bound traffic, or consistent controls across cloud and on-prem, layered with kind of best-of-breed security on top, that presents a really sort of significant differentiator to help people prepare for these trends, especially as it relates to AI. And yeah, ultimately it becomes an enabler for their businesses. If I look at some of the other challenges that reside around, say, like information security from an emerging technology standpoint, I'd say, having networks that are built that are secure by design, that enable things like seamless security insertion and have sort of that elastic security posture are going to be the key considerations to really think about when you're designing those networks, because ultimately, I talked about some of those AI trends a moment ago and the impacts they might have. And if you've got that sort of foundational network layer correct, then layering best of breed security on top of that has the same elasticity, the same agility is really going to help to meet with some of those demands too. So yeah, for me, it kind of goes back to that point I mentioned earlier about that holistic network approach, the foundational layers ready, best of breed security on top, and you've got kind of all the key ingredients there to meet a lot of these different emerging technologies and those challenges head on.
Yeah, and a lot of what underlies what both of you are talking about is making sure that is architecting a network or having a strategy around networking that really does sort of enforce the idea of agility and versatility and flexibility, so that you can make changes very quickly to connectivity, ensuring that the security controls are in place, any policies that need to be enforced can be enforced, that it's not overly burdensome to enterprise IT to make those changes, and they can do so confidently, right? And to ensure that the changes are taking place as they intend. So let's shift over to AI, because everybody's thinking about it, as you both rightly pointed out. And the interesting thing with AI is that, with AI and networking, is that it's not just the networking around the AI hardware stack, the back-end network, but running between the GPUs, or the front-end network, running among all the different, processing agents. There's AI sort of is impacting the network across the entire state, including everything from, say, data collection out at the edge, which may or may not be processed at the edge, or lightly processed or pre-processed at the edge, and then transmitted off to a data store to be fed into an AI engine, or is inferencing, and the load on the network to do inferencing. You have more users asking more questions. It's much more interactive than, say, hitting a web page, which is click a button, 50 links come down. When you're doing inferencing, it's a whole lot of communication. And Phil, you mentioned a couple of times, it's, and you can maybe talk a little bit more about it. It's the idea that east-west traffic now, sort of passing back and forth, and agentic is a big deal. So, Silvia, what are you seeing as the impacts of AI on the network? And how are you addressing it for yourselves and your customers?
We've covered some of the impacts and issues related to AI a moment ago. So high data volume, bandwidth strain, expanding security threat and landscape. But one issue that is quite specific to AI, and is just tying up to what you were just saying a moment ago, Michael, is probably unpredictability of the traffic patterns. So AI applications often generate burst traffic during model training, for example, or spikes during inference, which can really overwhelm a traditional WAN architecture. So let me try and give a few examples. Inference, so when we say inference, we refer to using a trained ML model, machine learning model, to give answers or make predictions or decisions based on new data, incoming data. So inference is often triggered by user actions or external event. So for example, in the aviation industry, it might be flight disruption or a boarding wave. When a sudden external event happens, the system might send hundreds of simultaneous inference requests to an AI service. This creates a burst of bidirectional traffic between the edge location and the inference engine, which is often hosted in the cloud. As inference must return results quickly, the demand for low latency communication, high throughput communication during peak events leads to very short and intense traffic spikes over the WAN. Also is quite interesting the case of inference chaining or agentic, as you mentioned before, agentic architecture. So agentic refers to AI systems that are designed to operate autonomously, basically. So they make decisions and take decisions and take actions on their own, interacting with other systems to achieve specific goals or objectives. A single sudden event or user request might trigger multiple interface queries, inference queries at the backend. So you can see how these systems can really quickly generate high volume of dynamic traffic, often across clouds and regions, and making traffic patterns really unpredictable. Don't know, Phil, if you experienced something similar with Alkira customers. Have any of these use cases ever come up?
Yeah, it has. Yeah, and it's kind of the forward thinking of where we're really going to be with AI and the impacts that's going to have on the network specifically. But to be honest, I'd completely agree with most of the things you've just said around sort of data volume and traffic increases. They're guaranteed no matter how we look at it. So capacity of the network is going to be of paramount concern for a lot of organizations, because as you rightly pointed out, there's going to be these these communications happening without necessarily human input that could see those things, those traffic levels increase. So where we're looking and discussing with organizations is that they shouldn't be in a position where they're paying for that capacity up front with like these large CapEx investments. However, they should need to know that it's available to burst into should they require it. So given those traffic patterns are going to be bursty and unpredictable, as you rightly said, this is going to just kind of highlight the need for a more flexible, a more scalable network, one that can align with the demands of AI kind of now and in the future, but without that kind of massive upfront investment that some organizations might need to look at with more of those kind of legacy architectures. So yeah, really kind of the networks traditionally built or the networks for today are really not necessarily built for those AI workloads. And what I mean by that is that AI is sort of accelerating other trends like multi-cloud, which has obviously been around for a little while now, but as we're going to see agents residing in different locations and within different cloud service providers, what this is going to drive is that increase in east-west traffic, which I think for many organizations, we're just not going to see them having built their networks in a way to really deal with that. So yes, this is kind of alluding to that. I'd say, if we expect that explosion in east-west traffic, this is also going to be driven by, not just those new traffic patterns, but the agentic AI as well. So if you look at the way kind of networks have traditionally been built, it's with that sort of north-south mindset for many years, because the goal has been, how do I get to the cloud? But now with things like agentic AI, we're seeing that happen across hybrid and multi-cloud, not in that sort of north-south pattern. So the true question should be sort of, how is my network built to adapt? How is my network built in a flexible way to meet these new demands? And building a network dynamically to handle both north, south, east, west traffic is going to be a key requirement moving forwards.
Yeah, it's an interesting point with agentic, because network IT, IT in general is used to dealing with that sort of east-west traffic, but it's been contained in a data center or in a cloud, right? And it's literally going from rack to rack, right? Or VM to VM. And what you're describing really is that east-west traffic is now going from one cloud service to another cloud service or someplace on premises. And it's not just a little onesie twosie sort of conversation. It can be a lot of conversations back and forth sort of continuously. And IT doesn't always know when those endpoints are going to start talking to each other, and what kinds of security controls, performance controls, and monitoring that needs to be in place. And that really sort of gets to a big part of the challenges that enterprises are going to face in this AI era that has very little to do with the AI processing. It has everything to do with the applications that are relying on AI as a foundation, right? But being able to talk back and forth and to do that sort of east-west traffic now is no longer just between racks, just between services across the globe. So that's a pretty big challenge. So fun. So there's solutions to deal with a lot of these network challenges. You know, we've gone through quite a few of them, Silvia and Phil did. And so there's a lot to think about. We've gotten to our Q&A session. Just a reminder, if you have any questions, just go ahead and type them into the question box and we'll get to them. We have a couple already in the queue, so I'm just going to go ahead and get started. And the first question, you know, Phil, I can start with you, and then Silvia, of course, add to it. Is, you know, how can enterprises ensure feature parity across locations where applications and users may reside?
So I'd say for this one, and it goes back to that holistic architecture, kind of, or the holistic network view that I talked about earlier, is that one single globally available network for interconnecting sites, users, clouds, data centers, and third parties is going to be key. So essentially, not having to rely on hop-by-hop configuration. You know, networking should be easy enough to create routing policies that are globally available instantly. So you should be able to create a routing policy in Amsterdam that is immediately available in Singapore, New York, Sydney, Hong Kong. You should be able to create a segment in London that spans the globe and sends that traffic around the globe in a segmented way and in a secure way as well. And all of that should really kind of take place at the click of a button as well. So for me, this is only something that kind of a true network as a service can provide, is that instant global availability and the scale that would come with that around sort of the agility of cloud and not relying on hardware, not deploying software. Silvia, I don't know if you've got any thoughts on that one.
No, I definitely echo what you just said. With network abstraction, so decoupling the control from the underlying infrastructure and having this bird's eye view of your network being on-prem up to the cloud, enterprises can really manage traffic and monitor performance in a really consistent way, even when what's underneath, so the underlays, vary. Again, this is achieved in several different ways, but by adopting software-defined networking, as well as cloud-based security and cloud and multi-cloud networking. This is the way to allow standardization of policies across environments and have full control of your network.
Okay, thanks. We just had a new question come in. So wanted to ask, so the person asked, one of the challenges of cloud is that there is some level of increased exposure. So what options are there for enterprises who want to establish completely private connectivity? And this is something that Silvia, you brought up when you were talking. So can you just give some thoughts on that?
So yes, when you're in the cloud, everything seems to be, it gives us perception that everything is exposed to the threat of the internet. There are several ways how you can protect your cloud resources. Within SITA and on the products that I manage, I deal with two main ways. One is SSE, security service, secure service edge, and this is how you ensure security of your cloud resources. And the other is leveraging on Alkira multi-cloud platform. So although Alkira is based on an internet underlay, if you'd like, so you would think, oh, internet is not as secure as you can think of being private circuits technologies. But using internet, you can still guarantee private connectivity using IPsec tunnels, for example, guaranteeing end-to-end encryption from your on-prem, your source destination, your source traffic to the destination of the traffic. So in this way, you're still guaranteeing a private connection, if you'd like. Obviously, there is still the option of using private circuits. And then I'll leave Phil comment on how you can use private circuits to reach up to the Alkira world to then make the jump into the cloud. But this is definitely still a possibility. This is a possibility even through the likes of AWS Direct Connect or Azure Express Route. These are type of circuits that would guarantee that private connection up until where you have your resources in the public cloud. Then I'll Phil, if you want to add anything.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, thanks, Silvia. So I guess if the network is sort of zero trust by design, and by that I mean if it has built-in segmentation, at layer 3 across hybrid and multi-cloud, then ultimately what you're doing is sort of building with those zero trust principles from the ground up. So on top of that, implementing and deploying sort of seamless security services and insertion on top means that you're further sort of advancing those designs, that zero trust design, and taking that to the next level in terms of then setting all the right routing policies and have everything set up for that traffic to be monitored at the right points, secure by design, fully segmented. And then ultimately there's always this perception that cloud gives a level of exposure, but as Silvia rightly pointed out, if your traffic is encrypted everywhere, then who's going to be able to see that anyway? So ultimately they're all the kind of key principles that would go behind building that. And from a private standpoint, as Silvia mentioned, if you then wanted to use encrypted IPsec tunnels to get into the Alkira network, that's a possibility. If you wanted sort of higher throughput, lower latency connectivity, leveraging Express Route, Direct Connect, Google Interconnect, then they're all forms of connectivity into the Alkira network that again is that sort of zero trust by design principle led. Then it's essentially then giving you that end-to-end network capability.
Okay, great. We have time for one last question, and then we're gonna wrap up. So, you both talked a lot about security and some of the security concerns. So this question is somewhat specific. I'm wondering, or the person asking the question is wondering, what are the extra challenges that enterprises face with interconnecting globally? And specifically, they bring up governance concerns around regionality. This is a big deal, especially with privacy concerns and so forth. So, for a global enterprise, what should they be thinking about in terms of governance and regionality?
So I can probably start, and then I'll pass it on to Phil. So especially in the aviation, when enterprises scale connectivity across the globe, things get quite messy and quite fast. You're not just connecting more sites or clouds. As you rightly pointed out, Michael, you're dealing with a whole new level of complexity and regulations. What we see at SITA, for example, infrastructure isn't consistent worldwide. So some regions still rely heavily on private network setup, while others may not have local entry point for these private networks, so traffic gets routed very inefficiently. That adds to high latency and jittery app performance. On top of that, local last mile connectivity can be very unpredictable. We see it very often. You might be forced to work with regional telco providers that don't meet your service level agreements or visibility needs. And in aviation, that's very risky. And finally, as you said, Michael, this comes as the biggest headache: governance and regulation. As soon as you're moving data across borders, you're dealing with a patchwork of compliance rules. Europe has GDPR, China has its own cybersecurity and data residency laws, and the Middle East comes with its own complexities on data inspection. And all these regulations don't align. So enterprises have to really carefully control where data lives, who access it, and which laws applies where. So what do you think, Phil? I think you have seen, and we've discussed together before, some of these challenges as well.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I guess you kind of touched on all the key points there from sort of a governance perspective. But yeah, in terms of some of the challenges we've seen, and especially, I've been fortunate within my role at Alkira to work across both the EMEA and APAC regions. And yeah, we've got some customers operating in regions where costs for legacy connectivity types, such as like lease lines and things like that, are incredibly expensive, and the variations globally can be very different as well. So whether it's a UK-based organization working in the Middle East trying to build connectivity might be suffering from or struggling with kind of the cost of that, or whether it's an organization trying to build connectivity to lots of different global sites or different global partners. Again, the variations in cost per region, local service providers that they're working with might be charging very different costs, and ultimately the service they're getting is the same wherever they're going, really. So those local service providers we've seen, they've long been able to charge significant amounts for connectivity, and enterprises haven't really had much choice to do anything different. Other much more sort of specific challenges we see are around things like connectivity to and from mainland China, and sort of how you bring that into your global network. That's an area in which there are many solutions, but very few that are far from simple to deploy. So yeah, it's another consideration, another area of complexity and cost for cross-border connectivity to really consider when it comes to interconnecting globally. And again, how you build that holistic view over those different regions, not just the different areas that you're operating.
Okay, great. And with that concludes our webinar for today. Thank you, Silvia and Phil. It's been a great talk, very informative. As a reminder, the on-demand version of this event will be available shortly. And on behalf of Alkira and S&P Global Market Intelligence, thank you for attending and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.